the best. It's the gift, not the thought, that counts.
This Christmas, give long-distance gift certificates to someone you care about so they can call someone they care about. This $20 set of $4 or $5 certificates, good in Canada or the US, comes complete with this beautiful greeting card, and it's conveniently chargeable to your phone bill. Pick them up at your nearest BC Telephone Mart or customer service office. Long-distance gift certificates. Give out so they can call someone they care about.
BCTV!
Good morning. How many times have I said it's time we closed the book on this disgusting creature, Olsen? We had this latest caper where they fly him out from Kingston, bring him to Abbotsford. The Mounties have been questioning him, obviously, in Kingston and all the way to and fro. And then yesterday, when he's headed to go back to Kingston, the Mounties have to take him to Victoria to see if he's going to give them information on yet another killing. Now, I don't blame the Mounties. The Mounties are well aware that this fellow is a con man of the lowest and most disgusting order. But if he hasn't produced anything on this trip, let's get him back into Kingston and close the book on him forever and never mention his damn name again. Anything that can be done to relieve the minds of other people is absolutely essential. Now we're getting speculation about, first it was 30 killings, now it's 50 killings. And there's no doubt in my mind that Olsen is trying to make his career a holiday camp, his lifetime in the pen a holiday camp, by trying to con the authorities in to his little trips west for his conjugal visits or whatever, or to see his book agents milking the system, the last man in the world who should be allowed to milk the system. No blame on the Mounties. No blame on the Attorney General. But unless there was specific information, let's, for God's sake, lock him up, throw away the key, and forget all about the damn man as far as we can. Because he gets away with it, it's a holiday trip every 5 minutes. He's really conning the system. What a way to start the morning. Otherwise, I'm in a perfectly good mood, because guess who's coming here today? Peter Pocklington. And I want to find out if this man is crazy, if he's a weirdo. He's the guy who leaves his body and flies to visit the Kremlin, according to the great Peter Newman, who is never, ever wrong. Is he just a rich man's Scalbania, Pocklington? Well, here's what he says in his quiet, sober moments, which he'll probably put on this morning.
It's up to the delegates of the party to decide who they wish to see as leader of their party. We live in a democracy, hopefully.
But if you feel strongly about your own personal views as they relate to the role of the state...
But I don't believe strongly in Joe Clark's philosophy. That's what I'm saying. I'm saying I have a different philosophy economically.
Right.
I'm very middle of the road when it comes to social programs.
Middle of the road when it comes to social programs. That was the man making his pitch to become the instant leader of the Tory party. In Newman's book, it says he's a believer in creative selfishness. That's not bad. Everybody can be a millionaire. Well, I have an MP here this morning by the name of Carney, Pat Carney, Vancouver Centre, doubtless an intimate of this man who wants to take over our party. What do you think of Peter Pocklington?
I never met the man in my whole life. And also, why are you giving me, a real Tory, second billing to a tinker Tory like Peter Pocklington?
You're not getting second billing.
You never even mentioned my name.
I'm mentioning it now. You're on first on the program.
And all you ever talk about is Peter who?
You're first on the program. But he's going to be second only because his jet just landed at the Vancouver airport 5 minutes ago.
I don't even know if he's a Tory. Why don't you ask him if he's a member of the Conservative Party of Canada?
He's got to be.
No, as far as I know. He's not on my mailing list.
We're just doing the introduction and you're hogging the program already. Pat Carney, first after the break. Honestly, Pat, when you look at the state of this nation today, now I'm not a Tory, as you well know. I'm not a Liberal either, and I'm certainly not an NDPer. But when you look at the state of this nation today, you wonder if the whole parliamentary system has failed. If in a democracy so-called like ours, there is no way we can control our own destiny because of the bureaucrats and the mandarins. Now, you've been watching these Joel Bells and Jake Austins, who was a bureaucrat, and Michael Pitfield, and this guy Clark with his 200,000 sabbatical, and Dome, I think his name is Doem, a DM or something, with his 280,000 severance pay. Is it possible in our form of democracy in Canada for the Parliament to act, to do something to try and help the ordinary working guy of this country? Or have we got to finish up with a benevolent dictatorship of some kind?
Well, obviously we don't have to, but I do believe that Canadians tend to get the government that they deserve. And in many ways, Canadians have really encouraged the kind of sloppy bureaucracy that we have at the senior level that allows a person like Joel Bell, whose real credentials are that he used to be in the Prime Minister's office, head up a corporation which has some winners like Teleglobe and some terrible losers like Canadair, a corporation which has got a wonderful airplane, the Dash, the Challenger, and which came to the House of Commons Parliamentary Committee the other day to say that there are $1.3 billion in debt. They want to borrow another $200,000. They can't promise that that's all that they're going to need, and they can't tell us when they're going to be in a break-even point. I mean, it's really shocking when government spending can get that far out of control, and they put a person like Joel Bell in charge of it.
And Joel Bell is a political activist who has become the head of this
the new Crown Corporation, Canadian Investment Development Corporation, or it's a new Crown Corporation set up to manage other Crown corporations. And it's one of the reasons that we rang the bells, if you remember, back in the spring.
When the bells went on and on and on and on. Okay, you're the deputy finance critic of the Tory party. For goodness sake, try and give me a little bit of an optimistic forecast, even though the Liberals are in power, about the state of Canada's economy.
Well, that's pretty hard to do, since at the moment we've just suffered the most severe drop in our second quarter that we have for 28 years or something. I don't think there's any way to avoid the fact that we're into a really tough winter, particularly here in BC. The forecasts are that we have 13% unemployment at the moment and that we could be going to 14% next year. But all that aside, I feel a slight tick, a little sort of tick that things really are starting to pick up in some areas. I don't know whether it's instinct or whether it's just optimism, but I think a lot of people are saying, well, I haven't lost my job yet, and I may not, so I will start buying new cars, or I will start buying a house.
Well, in other words, we've got 87%
of
of the people are working.
Right.
But the 87% are afraid, it would seem, because of the lack of leadership and lack of confidence, to spend what money they have in getting new cars or going into a new mortgage at the lesser rate.
No, you're far too esoteric for me this morning, Webster.
Me esoteric?
Definitely. What people are afraid of is losing their jobs. They're afraid. I talked to a friend of mine last night who was afraid that her husband's whole department will be closed down. He's got 15 years seniority. He's working on projects which are 5 years away. And he's worried that his whole department will be closed down and he'll be laid off. He is not buying anything at the moment. But there are an awful lot of people, I think, who are starting to feel, well, I've survived this far and I can make it through the winter and I'll start buying. Because the fact is that in order to pull out of the recession, in order to get into recovery, we have, and I've told you this before, only three real sources of push in the economy. We've got government spending, and with a $23 billion deficit, we can't increase that too much. We got investment spending, but if corporations have lost 53% of their profits, they don't have the money to invest. Or you got consumer spending. At the moment, consumers are really saving their money, squirreling it away, and until they start spending, we will not pull out of the recession. And I have the feeling that more consumers are starting to say, well, it's time to make some of those purchases. And I think that will help.
Is it the duty with people who have? Is it the duty of people who have jobs and have some resources to go out and spend to help the economy?
No, I think that is really
Nonsense.
nonsense. Throwing the baby out with the bathwater. I think that people have to have the confidence in their own future as well as the country's future before they start spending.
When you talked about your friend, I'm not going to prod, but I can ask you one broad question. Afraid of a department being wiped out. You're talking about a provincial government employee.
No, I'm not. I'm talking about, I'm talking about a Crown Corporation employee. I'm talking about people who cannot be guaranteed job security because the reason for their jobs may vanish.
Altogether?
Right.
Well, now, you said 30% unemployed this winter is...
Right, in BC.
Is there any threat to the continued payment for the foreseeable future of welfare and unemployment insurance?
I don't think that we can possibly cut that off. I think we have got to maintain those safety nets as long as the economy is in recovery.
But you're an economist, can we maintain these safety nets unlimitedly for a long period of time? We must.
I'd hate to think that we'd have to do it for a long period of time, but there is really no alternative. You really can't abandon your fellow Canadians. I'm encouraged by the amount of people who are work sharing. I'm encouraged about the amount of people who are taking cuts. I mean, when we talk about 6 and 5, that the Liberals talk about, most people I know have taken salary cuts. They've taken 15% cuts, or they've got no wage increases at all, or they're increasing their own output. They're doing things for their companies or for their departments that before they never did.
Well, once again, we can go back in history. Bennett was talking about 8, 10, 12, and 14. And then he came back to 6.5 and 5. The Feds came straight in with 6 and 5. They were surely wrong in giving any increases to civil servants at that time.
Well, possibly that's the, they only did it for political reasons. I think they pulled 6 and 5 just out of the air because there's no real validity towards it. The inflation rate is still 10%. Some people say it's because Mr. Trudeau's heading up to 6 and 5, 65 personally, and that's the only rationale for the numbers. But there is an awful lot of people in this country who are not getting 6% or 5% and who would think that those were pretty terrific increases.
There's really no earthly reason why civil servants should get it when you've got, say, 220,000 people claiming unemployment insurance in British Columbia. Hate these figures.
Yeah.
160,000 on welfare.
178,000 out of work.
The actual figure here is 178,000 out of work. What about Vancouver Centre? Have any of the programs announced by the provincial government in terms of these job sharing, partial UIC, have they helped at all?
Well, not the provincial ones, because remember I'm a federal MP, but I know that on my desk in my constituency office I have $3 million worth of applications for jobs, and I have $200,000. That's all. I've got $2.8 million of potential jobs that I can't find funding for. And
what's this $200,000 you've got? You've got that to spend.
From the Canadian development, from the Canada Development.
But do you have that as an MP?
Yes, every MP.
Hold on.
No, not every MP, but every riding receives that money. And then MPs usually set up advisory boards to determine how it's spent.
I want to know how that works.
Okay.
After the break. As I recall, as I sit here with Pat Carney, Tory MP, Vancouver Centre, the Libs said they were putting in $500 million, Lalonde told me that himself, for job creation. Now, tell me about this $500 million. How many jobs has it created?
Well,
he said 66,000, I think it was.
Well, my point is that those really are makeshift, make work, make do jobs, because they're not real long-term employment. We have an ironic situation which is developing. When I said that in my constituency I have $2.8 million worth of job applications that I can't fill, those are real jobs in place that you could send people to tomorrow. But for this $500 million worth of money that Lalonde's talking about, they don't really have programs in place, because you either have to be on unemployment insurance, or you have to be, in that terrible word, you have to be an unemployment insurance exhaustee. You have to have run out of your benefits, or you have to be this, or you have to be that, or priorities go to, women, natives, handicapped, etc. And it's very hard to channel that money into productive jobs.
But is this $2.8 million you're talking about, is this sitting in a lump somewhere in unemployment insurance? And
no, that is the amount of applications on my desk for jobs. We have a program
But
called...
why do people come to you for the jobs?
They don't, because it's done on a riding basis. The government announces this program, the Canada Community Development Program.
Ah, that's it.
And then every riding is allocated so much money. And then all the service agencies or the people who want jobs put in applications, and they are sent to your riding. And we work with a project officer, and in my case, to determine who's going to get the money. In my case, I always work with a local advisory board. I take some of the best talent in the city, all of them volunteers, and they sit there and they wade through $3 million worth of applications, and they sort out what jobs will be funded from this miserable little $200,000.
$200,000 is your allocation to
That's my
Vancouver
allocation,
Centre.
right.
This is to ease unemployment in your riding.
Right.
Every constituency across the country gets an allocation of money.
Yes.
And if you're a Liberal constituency, you'll get more money.
Well, all I know is that in my Ottawa riding, where I live when the House is in session, my MP in Ottawa gets twice as much as Vancouver Centre.
Per head.
Well, he gets around $375,000.
All right, now, has this $200,000 been given out on community?
Canada Community Development Program. That's gone.
That's gone.
Yeah. The new money, which is called, all these acronyms, the Community Response Program or NEED or whatever, this new money is coming in, but you have to meet certain criteria. Like, you have to be on unemployment insurance. If you're a kid and you haven't worked and you don't qualify for unemployment insurance and you are not drawing it, you don't get a job. That's the problem. And that's one of the reasons why youth employment is so high in this province.
So these phony programs, not funny perhaps, but they are phony in that they're bureaucratic programs,
right.
Difficult to allocate. You only get a small amount of money. You've got to give it to an approved group,
right.
Who then hire the people.
Right.
And the people.
And I have gone to the minister and say, you don't need a lot of more paperwork. You don't need to set up new programs. Why don't you fund these programs on my desk for which we don't have any money? Just put the money to that. Just fund it all. Get all those people working. We know that those jobs are there. And think of the work it involves for the poor government project officers here in the region who've got to try and allocate money fairly when they have so many applications. I mean, I just say, and Axworthy has said that he refuses to consider that.
How much do these jobs pay, if that's not a silly question?
They are very limited in the amount of money they pay. In some cases, they just top up unemployment insurance, but they're not high-paying jobs at all. They're aimed at a subsistence income for...
In fact, a single man is much better to stay on unemployment insurance or collect his full, or even to stay on welfare, than to go on one of these phony programs for a little while, be disqualified from everything, and have to go back again for his relief.
Well, he has to take a good look at it, because you know how unemployment insurance works sometimes, where if you take a job, you do lose some unemployment insurance benefits. You have to be very careful. I just say it's a very complicated way of creating jobs. I have job applications on my desk. If you want people working, fund them. You don't need any more bureaucracy. The project officer in the region has already worked on those. Just fund them and
everything
get those people
okayed
working.
by a project officer should be funded, and people could be picked off the unemployment insurance rolls or
right.
beyond and given a job. I thought that's what they were going to do. Just
no,
double talk.
No. It's,
bureaucracy.
Well, it's not. In this case, I don't think it's the bureaucrat's fault as much as it is the minister's fault, because he has the choice of doing this. I've asked him to do this. He's refused.
That's dear Axworthy.
Dear Axworthy.
Now, what lies ahead?
What lies ahead this winter?
What's the atmosphere in the House of Commons these days? Because we are told that the only prosperous city in the country where housing prices go up and everyone has the fancy lunches and the fancy expense accounts is Ottawa.
Right. Ottawa is still pretty well recession-prone.
Recession-proof.
Recession-proof. What bothers me in talking to the business community and some of the labor leaders is the fact that we've lost jobs now that we're never going to get back. You know, when Port Alberni has 4,000 jobs, 4,000 people out of work, they may only ever have 300,000 that go back to work. There's a net loss of jobs. Last year, we figured that there's 500,000 jobs lost that will never come back because people have learned to do without them. And it's also very hard on women because a lot of those jobs are held by women, and the rate of unemployment in the women workforce is rising.
The classically wealthy family in today is the two civil servant income. The teacher and the social
They're the new
worker.
aristocrats.
The doctor and the psychiatrist wife. You know, the two fancy, solid state incomes. They're the people who've got the world by the tail.
Well,
The married man with 3 kids and the sick wife is having a very tough time.
I can't argue against that, except that today the 2-income family is the normal family for in a lot of cities. There's very few families today who have 1 income only, unless it is a single-parent household. I mean, you can't. Most people are working. Most women are working, and most families are working because they need the money, and you know that.
Yeah, I know that well, but I mean, name of God, I don't know what's going to happen.
But what bothers me is that the projections are that when we come out of this recession, we will go to a more automated world, because you can estimate the costs of machines and you can increase the productivity of machines better than people. And they say that the only people who will have work in the future are going to be people who know how to work with other people or who are very creative and innovative, and that certainly excludes you and me.
Yeah. Not to be nasty or anything. Can the Tories do any better?
Yes, I think so.
Not in a shot hall.
No, I'm not saying that there's a turnaround in a year or so, but we have a fundamentally different philosophy, as you know. We really do believe more in private initiative and risk-taking and deregulation and the end of government intervention, and the Liberal government is interventionist. I mean, they just have the belief that government can resolve all the problems, and if you turn private enterprise over to government, they can run it better, and that bureaucrats like Joel Bell can run it better than Cal Newtson of M&B, and the proof of the pudding is in the eating.
They can't. Your questions and comments to Pat Carney after the break.
It made committees much more powerful.
Pat was telling me the Liberals have done something good.
No, I didn't say the Liberals had done something good. I said that an all-party committee of Parliament, including the opposition, has just brought in a whole new set of parliamentary rules which will make Parliament more efficient, more responsive, and tougher. And I think that that's going to help restore some confidence in...
When do they start these rules?
They start at January the 1st, and the bill passed the House this week. It'll mean, for instance, and this is very important, our committees will be tougher. At the moment, very few people understand that if we say Jack Webster is a national disgrace and he's just absconded with a lot of citizens' money, the only way we can investigate that situation is if the minister gives us the right in our finance committee. And that means he's never going to give us anything really controversial to look at. Now, under the new rules, we will have the right to study whatever it is we want to.
Can you call Joel Bell?
Yes, we probably can call Joel Bell.
From Pitfield?
Possibly we can.
All
I
these
don't know
grey eminences?
Yeah, but we'll be able to say that we want more financial information, and we'll be able to investigate much more on the U.S. style of calling witnesses, even if it embarrasses the minister. That's good. And the other point that's going to be very important is we've gone to a fixed calendar. The opposition gave up the right to stonewall the government in this, because now we'll have fixed sessions of the House. We're going to morning sessions instead of evening sessions. It'll be more efficient and hopefully more productive, and it'll be a better Parliament.
Good. And if you ever get into power, you'll be pleased with it.
Well, that's one of the reasons that our party cooperated with these changes.
So that when you're in power.
Because we are the government in waiting, and the Liberals are the opposition in waiting, and both sides wanted to have the House perform in a more efficient way.
Common sense prevailed?
Common sense prevailed.
After how many years?
Oh, I don't know, probably 100 and some years.
Go ahead, Pat Carney.
Good morning, Jack and Pat.
Morning.
Good morning.
I have a short question. Maybe you can answer this question. Why, if somebody retires from the armed forces with a pension and it's indexed, why he gets first shot at a government job? In other words, this has always been going on. Anybody who has had a government job gets a government job when he reapplies. Simple as that. Thousands are retiring with index pensions at $20,000, $25,000 a year, and they get first choice when they get out at a government job.
BC ferries are riddled with ex-Navy officers with big golden handshake pensions. All kinds of provincial government and federal government places are. It was okay in times of affluence. We did a check on the motor vehicle branch in British Columbia recently in one of the areas, and I think we found that all the inspectors were ex-policemen drawing fancy pensions.
Exactly. Why is this going on?
It's going on because nobody's had guts enough to stop it.
Okay, well,
5 out of 6 inspectors at the Burnaby office of the Motor Carrier Commission to ex-RCMP officers collecting pensions. They all had to compete. They were all the most suitable. But it ain't fair now anymore.
That's right.
I would agree it's not fair.
Not fair, is it?
No.
Vets preferred was the old business of the soldier coming out of the army after the war and getting a little edge.
We're not talking about veterans.
No, we're now talking about wealthy military and naval and police people walking into smart jobs with big money
Well, you may.
for not very much work. I resent that. Do you resent it?
If certainly I resent it if in fact it's true, and I
It's
only know
true.
a few cases of it.
It's true. Nobody would dare open the books on it. Go ahead, please.
Hello.
Yes.
I'm calling to inquire why there's so much money going into these makeshift job programs. Why is there not more money? As she pointed out, when we come out of this recession, we're going to be into a technologically different world. Why isn't money isn't going into education where it should be? Where when we come out of this, we can actually be competitive in the world market and not where we are right now.
Question.
Well, first of all, we don't fund education at the provincial level, at the federal level, except at the university stage. And I think that there's an awful lot of people who are worried about the money going into education, but an awful lot of other people who think that there has been some, options that we can reduce. Most of the increases in education spending are, of course, teachers' salaries. And if everybody else has to take cuts in salaries or low increases, then teachers have to too.
It's a question of forward planning, really.
Right.
That's all it is, but it hasn't been done.
There's one point that's never pointed out, and that is that most of the arguments for civil servants' salaries is that they are supposed to equal private sector salaries. And I say, if that's the case, then when private sector salaries decrease or they have to take cuts, so should public servants. I mean, if you're going to have fair is fair.
You're missing the point. I'm not a student or a teacher advocate. I'm just a person who would appreciate a job training opportunity somewhere if it were made available, and it's just not available anywhere.
No, I know your problem, because a lot of funds for that have dried up. And possibly, the answer is very clearly in putting more of this makeshift programs or more of this money into really short-term programs into some of those longer-term programs which will pay off in highly skilled jobs, because we're going to have to need them. We're going to have to fund them down the road.
Yeah, it would make sense. Yeah.
Right.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, mind you, in British Columbia, I suppose that people can turn around and say we put in quite a lot of high-tech stuff. We've opened all kinds of colleges which are semi-tech. We've got a vast place at BCIT, but it doesn't seem to have filled the bill, does it?
I still can't talk about what's happening in a lot of areas of
Vocational
BC.
training has always been confused. There have been allegations of unions preventing people from getting in and
yes.
all the rest of this kind of
yeah,
caper.
well, two things have to happen there. One is employers have to be prepared to train people, even though they may not be able to keep them. That's one of the arguments. Employers say, why should I train Joe Blow? Because once I train him, he will leave for my competition. And unions have been some unions, not all, but some unions have been very, very sticky about increasing the number of apprentices and increasing the number of people who can learn particularly skilled trades.
But the computer, of course, was to create fewer jobs to give people more leisure, but we don't want leisure with no money, right?
Nobody wants leisure with no money.
Go ahead, please.
Yes, good morning, Pat. I was just wondering, naturally, the governments want to put as many people as possible back to work, but one thing is what about, why not channel all this money, for example, into the armed forces? I heard on a radio program that in the RCMP bureaucracy, there was actually more people employed there than there is in the armed forces, and it would be good internationally, it would be good locally, and people could get trained inside that service.
Well, this government has not been noted for beefing up the armed forces except in bilingualism. Is that not correct?
Well, I certainly know that a lot of money is spent.
And is it not a fact now that people are queuing up to join the armed forces because it's a secure income and it's cradle to the grave welfare, and it's not such a bad life compared to some other lives?
Well, yes, but that whole perception has changed, because if you'll remember, it's only last year or 18 months ago that there were a lot of people leaving the armed forces because pay levels were considered to be low, and it wasn't considered as an attractive employment as it is now. But yes, the point is that may be a way of training people, because they have good people in place to train people.
Well, Snyder, Mark, I don't really mean it. I've got to say it. They all got golden handshakes and got jobs with the BC government.
You're speaking of your friends on Salt Spring Island. I don't.
You kindly leave where I live out of this.
Well, you know, and I just don't run in your circles where I meet all of these wealthy retirees.
Women's lib. After the break. You know, there's almost a danger here that one will lose one's political fire because of concern over the economy. And I had 2 trade union leaders in here yesterday who were so moderate and sober and reasonable. You wouldn't believe it was the same country we're still in.
Well, maybe that's a good thing.
Up to a point. Now, going to orbit about the magnificent appointment of Donald MacDonald, former Liberal finance minister, to run this stupid Royal Commission, a really stupid Royal Commission. And then he says, if Trudeau announces he's going to quit, I'll give up the Royal Commission and run for the leadership.
And not only that.
There are lots of people out there who can't remember this big, towering Toronto thumper,
right.
MacDonald.
That's his nickname, Thumper. But not only that, is he will not give up his corporate directorships. He's on one of the banks, and the banks have, you know, the trouble the banks are in. He's a member of an American forest products company. Well, you know the problems that the forest companies in the U.S. are giving us. He's a member of several manufacturing companies in deep trouble, and he's announced that he won't give up his corporate directorships. And that is the man who they have entrusted the future of our country to. But I have asked in the House about what his economic qualifications are for this job, because when he was finance minister, and we looked it up, he doubled our deficit. He took a deficit of about $4 billion and he ran it up to $8 billion. Unemployment grew, government spending grew all the time he was in finance minister. The Lambert Commission on Government Spending said under his term, government spending was critically out of control. But I say they could have given us John Turner. And John Turner took a balanced budget and ran it up into a $5 billion deficit. He increased government spendings 23% when he was finance minister, and unemployment increased. So we can thank our lucky stars. Donald MacDonald is bad enough, but he's going to go away and run for the Liberals, and we are lucky that we didn't get John Turner.
Okay, serious question before Peter the Pock comes. I'm not going to ask you to nag Joe too much, but is Joe going to win the leadership review in Winnipeg in January?
I don't think he'll have any trouble. I'm chairman of the elections committee, so our committee has to keep it all very clean and above board and honest. Right, no stuffing the ballot boxes on this one. But that's going to be a lot of fun. But I really don't think that there is going to be a lot of problem for Joe.
What's going to happen in Winnipeg? Is it merely a vote as to whether or not there should be a review, or will there be? It's not a leadership fight.
No,
not a leadership ballot.
No,
is it?
The Conservatives have in their constitution something the Liberals won't put in. Do you remember the Liberal conference? We have an automatic review of the leadership question that comes up constitutionally every 2 years. And the question, it's very simple. It says, and you can never alter the ballot, it says something very simple like, do you favor a leadership review?
Yes or no.
Yes or no.
And Joe will win that.
And when Joe's prime minister, every 2 years, there still will be a leadership review.
And Joe will win that hands down.
Yes, I think he won't have any trouble.
And
now, when the other parties put it in, I think the NDP have it, but the Liberals rejected having that automatic review. But it's important because it's an accountability factor. It means that, you know, if I, in the unlikely event were ever prime minister, I would have to account to my party for my performance, and I think that that's a very valuable element to have in any political party.
I can well see the day when you will be the Tory Prime Minister of Canada, and...
Do you want to run off with Iona?
That's what I was saying, you know. Iona and Pat, that would be a bit of a riot. She has a louder voice than you, I think.
Oh, I think possibly she has. I mean, I'm actually a nice, sweet, kind, soft person at heart, as you know.
That's right.
And that's, you know, quite a contrast to Iona.
And a woman
I admire.
You've never made it blatantly obvious that she did in this program that what she's after is a Senate seat.
Well, because she needs the money. I mean, you have to...
Is that a reason to become a senator, to need the money?
It's been a unique reason, but, you know, I think that she...
Will you be just as bad with Piola when you're in power as a Libs are?
Well, as our friend Fotheringham says, you know, at least it'll be Tory Piola. I mean, he's tired of Liberal Piola.
A different Piola.
No, but I mean, remember, Iona is the president of that party, and I'm not defending her, but if she has a lot of work to do, I think that she deserves her Senate seat. As long as it's not my Senate seat. As long as it's as long as it's not a Conservative Senate seat. But you know, she
When
needs
you
some
see
money.
that Jack Austin, according to Christina McCall Newman, some Eastern writer, gets a total benefit emolument of $4 million in his pension.
Well, what about Peter Stollery, the MP who was bumped up to the Senate?
To make room for Jimmy Coots,
who didn't make it.
Muffed it in Spadina.
Yeah, and we got Dan Heap instead. That you know.
Dan Heap, who's he?
Oh, he's
NDP.
that well-known, yes.
Alderman, Toronto City Council.
Yes, that well-known NDPer.
What happened to telephone calls we were taking?
Back to you, as we get so interested in talking and gossiping, Jack.
Well, we're a bit slow off the top this morning. We're only beginning to waken up now.
Speak for yourself.
Go ahead, please.
Hi, Pat. I'd like to make exceptions to the opening statement you made that people have get the government they deserve. Well, I don't think most of the people in BC are separatists, but we have nothing to do with the Eastern government situated in Ottawa. We can't draw on them for any help. And certainly our MPs, Turner or Fraser and yourself and others, are speaking out at very little impact on policy. So I can't see where you can possibly say that we deserve this federal government. We have nothing to do with it. It ends over at Manitoba border, and that's...
You're quite right. And actually, you are right, because I keep trying to make the point in the East that Westerners do elect Conservatives, and they do elect as an opposition party the NDPs, and we're not responsible for what the Liberals are doing in the East. But I suppose I was talking in the context of all of those people, particularly in Central Canada, who do and have elected Liberals, even though we have seen the light, is that the word, and have indicated a whole different priority.
You know, the last election...
But I just want to point out, I do think that we get the government that we deserve in the state in the sense that we have been indifferent to some of the abuses of power in government. And, you know, we don't...
listen, outside of that, you know, I was working with Chuck Cook. He's our member of Parliament here in North Van.
Is he still in the House?
During the last election.
Good man.
I was at waiting for all the ballots to come in, the rest of it. By the time we had finished, well, not even finished counting, the election results were already in. The Liberals had won.
Right.
And, you know, it was just so disheartening. What the hell can we do? You know, it's not a matter of being a separatist or even having separatist feelings, because most of my people are back east.
Well,
what can you do? You're so hopeless back.
Well, if it's any consolation, according to our polls, we could win a majority government in Canada today without Quebec. The biggest factor...
Well, there again, you know, it's so difficult, because who wants to leave Quebec out? If it means that the Conservatives are going in at the cost of Quebec, well, that's no way to run it. You know, we have to have a national party that's going to go both in Quebec and in BC.
Well, yes, but we are
We're not interested in having this...
We are, okay.
Where we have a Conservative government except Quebec, and then that leaves Quebec out, and the same alienation is going that we feel now. We can sympathize with them feeling later on.
Yes.
There's nothing going on with our voting system itself, our government.
Yes, but I can answer that. I'm not saying we would not win seats in Quebec. I'm saying that one of the reasons that the Liberals keep in power, even though they're a regional government, is that they do get, you know, half their seats from Quebec. We expect to win some seats in Quebec, and we do have a Quebec MP. The Conservatives are the only national party, which people forget. We're the only people who have MPs in the West, in Ontario, in Quebec, in the Maritimes, in the Yukon, and the NWT.
Thank you, sir. Patsy, we hang around for another short segment till Peter the Pot gets here, will you?
Well...
I couldn't do it myself this morning.
Okay.
Okay?
Okay.
Okay?
Yep.
Okay. The economy and unemployment is your biggest burden as an MP at the moment. People wanting help.
Yes,
Must be.
right. We're deluged at our office with people who are having problems getting their unemployment check on time, people who fall through the safety net, people who just need help. It takes an awful lot of our effort, and also it's discouraging to see how people themselves get discouraged. But, you know, things are going to get better eventually. And we're all working hard.
Good. I thought that was a machine gun, but it's only John Gibbs typing in my ear. Go ahead, please.
If I could have your attention, Jack.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I have 3 points, by the way. The last gentleman...
John, could you do me a favor?
I'm sorry, I'll do the show if Jack isn't interested.
Never mind
I'll
about
do the
Jack.
show.
The last gentleman that was on spoke quite readily about what the Western Canadian feels like about in his own country. I have 3 points. Number one, I hope that there's some MPs that have some backbone and will stand up and be counted. We have an immigration policy that is absolute lunacy. We're bringing in people now. In fact, what's his name? The immigration minister said he's going to cut down the amount by 25%. We should stop immigration completely, because we'll have about somewhere in the vicinity between 2 to 2.5 million people unemployed in 1983, possibly even higher than that. And the fact is, we're bringing in people in from the third world, uneducated, illiterate, and with many health problems, which will be sucking our social services dry.
Okay, hold on there for a second.
I was just going to say that since Jack Webster's preferred guest has arrived, maybe you could get to your other 2 points.
Okay,
now that's a nasty remark.
Pat, we
Quiet,
are spending $5 million a day in supplying aid to foreign countries. That money should be plowed back into this country for research and development, for new industries to employ our people. And point 3, we have some 66,000 foreign students in our country, which we are supporting to the tune of over $750 million. And if I go to England to further my education, I will be paying somewhere between $14,000 to $15,000 to $16,000 for my furtherance of education. I think that they should also pay the full shot.
Well, I think your points are well taken, and I'll now turn the show back to Jack.
You didn't answer these questions.
I agree with...
Let me put it to you.
I agree that immigration has to be tailored to the economic conditions. I agree that we should extend to foreign students aid, but certainly in return for aid to ourselves. And I certainly support his view that we should be plowing money into R&D.
But there is not one MP in this country, save and except one right-winger on the North Shore.
You know, that's so unfair.
Just a minute, you haven't had what I was going to say to you.
Yeah, but your BCTV doesn't carry those feeds from the House of Commons. I mean, they'd rather carry feeds on the opening of the daycare centre than on what some of the local MPs are saying in the House.
How do you know?
Because I monitor it.
And you're never on BCTV?
They're not nearly as often as I am in the House of Commons.
How often are you on the CBC?
I am in the 4th most active questioner on Question Period in the House of Commons, and they still give daycare priority over me.
How many times have you been on this program?
You're making me feel unwanted.
More than Chuck, what's his name, or John Fraser, or anybody else.
I don't do your programming for me. All I know is that I saved your bacon today by showing up, and I'm your second guest.
That's right. And not the preferred one, but don't go yet.
Well, maybe you need your Christmas vacation.
Nobody will tackle the problem of the incredible weight in our social services under the unlimited family unification problem of the Canadian Immigration Department.
It is not necessarily unlimited. And I think the family unification is a priority to give where we have immigrants at all. I mean, where would you be if we didn't have an immigration policy, Jack?
I certainly didn't want to be reunified with my family, though. Just before you go, I'm not going to have you going at snit. What do you think of Pocklington?
As I said, I've never met the man, and if he wants to run for the leadership, it's a free party and it's a Democratic party, and he can pay his deposit and get his 50. I can tell him right now what he needs as the chairman of the election committee. He has to have 50 people sign his papers.
Good.
All across the country. They have to be regionally, he has to have regional representation. He has to get his papers into me by noon on the Saturday before, no, he has to get his papers in before the review, and I wish him very little luck.
Well said. Thank you very much, Pat. Am I forgiven for my rudeness?
Well, we'll see.
Next, this man. I mean, all I know about Pocklington is what I read in this volume of the Note Takers for the Rich, and he certainly makes Pocklington sound like a complete weirdo. After the break.
I guess most of being successful is the fact that you become what you think you are. And I learned early teens that in order to get what I wanted, I would have to believe in it to the point of almost a religion. You really become what you think.
terrible flaws. And if Canadians would simply look at it the way they would look at any other industry, the bankers wouldn't get away with quite so much.
How about computerized accounts?
They
Are
drive
they not
me,
a nightmare?
They are a nightmare for you and I. They are not a nightmare for the banks. All of the benefits of the computer accrue to the banks, but they're being used to invade our privacy, which I object to. They're being used to rip off enormous sums of money, and the banks simply turn their heads and pretend it isn't happening.
You mean computer fraud?
Computer fraud is enormous and growing. The fraud in the little bank cards that they're so proud of. In the United States, we don't even publish the figures. In the United States, the fraud on those things has doubled every year for the last 3 years. So you get a line that's going like this on computer fraud.
Aren't we all protected against that, though? If I lose a Visa or something, am I not protected up beyond $50?
No. On a Visa card, you can get separate insurance, and on a Visa card, you're protected up to when you inform the bank. But on that bank card, there's no such protection. There are built-in protections up to about $300 on some of them, but it depends on where it's been this year.
Best of luck with towers of gold and feet of clay. My thanks to Walter Stewart. For all I know, Peter Pocklington might one day be the Prime Minister of Canada under a Tory, presumably Labour. But I don't know. When I read what Peter Newman wrote about Pocklington and the Acquisitors, I look at you and I think, are you a rich man Scalbania, a Scalbania who made it, a flip-flop artist who struck money quickly, and you're now just playing at politics?
I don't think so, Jack. In fact, I moved to Alberta in '71 and boom times, got into business. In fact, many businesses. They've all done well, had a tough time in the last couple of years with high rates of interest. But no, I'm very seriously concerned about where my country's going. I detest state socialism, and I see that's the direction it's headed.
Tell me what you think of Trudeau first.
Skied with him 6 years ago. He's a delightful man, one-on-one. It took me 2 weeks to hate him again. I hate what he believes.
What does he believe?
He's a state socialist. He believes that if he controls everything under government control, he can best look after the people of Canada, which of course is nonsense.
Privately, do you consider Trudeau as an out-and-out Maoist?
Well, I wouldn't go as far as calling him a Maoist. He's a state socialist. Sometimes people who write books sometimes get touched into something that might sell books.
Well, this sells books here.
You're right.
When did you last leave your body on a nocturnal flight?
What a lot of nonsense.
No, don't give me that nonsense. Fotheringham, Newman, that's you, is convinced that he leaves his body on nocturnal flights to visit the pyramids, swooping down the length of the Nile, touring the towers of the Kremlin. Now, is that a figment of Newman's imagination?
I believe he read that somewhere in, I guess, doing the report on myself. It sounds like a lot of fun, by the way.
Is that untrue?
Yes, it is untrue.
Do you believe you have psychic powers?
Oh, I believe that I have a lot of intuition. I don't know whether I'm too psychic.
You can't tell me the next question I'm going to ask.
No, you're so right.
Do you despise people on welfare?
No, I don't despise anybody. I guess I despise the system that put them there.
What does it say here? I believe, you say, in Ayn Rand's theory of creative selfishness. Now, to the 176,000 unemployed and the 160,000 on welfare in British Columbia, tell them in that camera there what creative selfishness is.
I guess it believes, or at least I believe, that you can best attain what we're set on this earth to do under a system of freedom, not under state socialism. It's state socialism that has taken away the jobs that you're referring to.
And on this case, Newman has got you right. And you now say, too, do you not, that the more money is shoveled into welfare, the further the breakdown in families?
Absolutely. And to me, the whole strength of our society is built from the family up.
So one of the first things in the Pocklington plank is to cut out welfare.
No, I didn't say that at all. The first thing in my plank is to get the country going again economically. And the first thing I would do is initiate a flat tax rate of 20%. The first $12,000 the family would pay nothing on. From there on, 20%.
How about corporate
included.
taxes?
Corporate, the same.
20%?
20%. Why kill the goose that laid the golden egg?
It would certainly help the rich and better off people, wouldn't it?
You really think it would?
A nice 20%
no, not so,
simple
Jack.
taxation?
A lot of nonsense, because they don't pay much now anyway, because they have ways of sheltering it, with depreciation, with MRBs, and so on. I prefer to pay 20% In fact, it brings in the same dollars that are brought in now. It leaves 80 cents in the hands of those who have earned it to create a better country.
Now, you've brushed me off very much on this great propaganda that Fotheringham and Newman do across the country, and you're trying to present yourself as a sober, tough, warm-hearted, right-wing conservative. Is that correct?
I guess that might be, I guess financially conservative. I'm very middle of the road. I like people.
Do you believe in flying saucers?
I never thought about it.
Never thought about it?
I guess if I did think about it, I don't disbelieve.
Do you have a bit of a religious fundamentalism to you? I don't mean an organized religion, but are you a guy who is a soulful believer in destiny?
Yes, I certainly am.
And you are a bit of a psychic, aren't you?
Touch.
And you do leave your body and fly down the
No, I don't.
You do?
I see, because Newman says it.
When you were
I
a
do.
youth, he visited a friend he hadn't seen for years, who told him shortly afterwards, you know, Peter, I've been thinking about you a lot lately. Well, that's easy. I've got that much ESP. But I don't leave my body. Now
No,
let's
I
get down
don't
to
either.
politics. What do you think of Joe Clark?
I think he's a fine fellow. I had breakfast with him a week ago.
Politically, what do you think of Joe Clark?
Politically, I believe we have our differences.
How much of a difference?
Quite
You
a bit
regard
of
him as a
difference.
left-wing Tory, a little bit of a pinko.
Well, I don't regard him as a pinko. I regard him as maybe a touch more left than a conservative should be.
Do you believe in capital punishment?
Yes, I do.
You would bring back the rope.
I'm afraid I would. I don't believe that the fellow that's had a crime perpetrated against him should receive worse treatment than the fellow that did it.
Hang premeditated murderers.
Absolutely.
Do you think that separation of Canada is inevitable?
No, I don't. I believe Canada will stay together if we can bring back an economy that's looked after in each particular family unit, instead of all controlled by the government.
Pourquoi voulez-vous être le Premier Ministre du Canada?
Not yet.
What did I say to you? And you got the answer. The question was, why do you want to be Prime Minister of Canada? And you said not yet.
That's correct.
Have
I
you
have
dropped
not
your
spoken French yet, and I don't believe in my 41 years I've had time to squeeze that one in
How
here
can
in
you
Western
possibly
Canada.
be Prime Minister of Canada, a united Canada, unless you have made the effort at least to speak my type of pidgin French?
If there's a leadership, I will speak your type of pidgin French.
Are you a member of the Conservative Party now?
Yes, I am.
You got a ticket?
I've even got a little card that says I'm there.
Provincial or federal?
Federal.
Federal member of the party. Are you going to go as a delegate with your 50 supporters to the Winnipeg Review meeting in January?
I'm going to show up, certainly, as a fellow interested in the process.
What do you think of Lougheed? Is he not better qualified than you to go for Clark's throat?
Well, I don't... Going after a man's throat. I'm not after anybody's throat. That's up to the delegates of the party, Jack. If the delegates decide that there should be a convention, that's the democratic way. All I'm saying, I'm an angry businessman going across this country saying there is a better way to make this country great.
But Peter, you're a political neophyte.
I understand that.
You
I
know
was
that.
told the same thing when I went into business. I won't make it. Young man, you should stay in the business that you're best trained to do. And thank God I didn't listen.
You stayed in the business you were best trained to do. Now, how much are you worth? $500 million?
No.
Couple of $100 million.
I don't know. It doesn't matter. I've been successful at business. I enjoy business.
And you're financially secure for the rest of your
I'm financially
life.
secure. I can go and do politics for $1 a year.
That's good. And if you became Prime Minister, you wouldn't draw a salary.
That's correct.
That's one commitment.
One
no
commitment.
salary.
No
to become
salary
Prime
for
Minister.
Puck. That's correct.
How much is no salary for Puck? Oh, you got quite a bargain on Gretzky, didn't you? Didn't you? Didn't Skalbania have to give you them for $250,000?
No, it was negotiated. I think that, remember, I bought him when he was 17. We really didn't know how great the great Gretzky was going to be.
And then Skalbania gave you, and he regrets it now, the option on the Islanders for nothing.
Not quite, $500,000.
Oh, it's $500,000.
That's correct.
Well, in those days, $500,000.
Same as $1 million today.
It was nothing, wasn't it?
That's
in
true.
those days.
That's correct.
Now, what else do I want to ask you? I'm not trying to be nasty. I just want to try and get a feeling for you. You certainly don't rattle that easily.
True.
Give me your considered opinion on countervailing duties. Now, that's a trick question.
Now that rattled me. There's no question.
You're not aware of the greatest crisis in British Columbia's economic history, the possibility that with no prospect of a presidential veto, a U.S. authority can put a tariff on our lumber in June of next year.
I believe in free trade, and I'm sorry to hear that. But unfortunately, I did not know particularly about that incident.
What about the crow rate? Are you for the abolition of the crow rate?
I believe in free trade. I believe in free economic movement. So therefore, I believe in the abolition of the crow rate.
Are you supported particularly in your campaign in Alberta by those faithful members of the Amway Corporation?
Not to my knowledge. I've spoken to the Amway Corporation 3 times. They're a delightful bunch. They're excitable and they're free enterprisers.
You don't have any money in it, do you?
Not a bit.
Glad to hear that.
Not
Peter Pocklington. He's winning. I'm losing. I'm too loud. He's too cool. That's providing he's really bearing his soul to me. After the break.
Naturally, I think that I'm the best person in the country to lead this party to victory. The record proves that.
And now a slightly more sober-sided interview with Peter Pocklington. Now, conceded, you've been a great financial success. You're solid as a rock financially. You've made your mark. You came out of Toronto originally.
London, Ontario, grew up.
To Alberta, what, 10 years ago?
1971, Jack.
1971. What was it that made you decide to go on this unusual campaign to become an almost instant Prime Minister of Canada?
Well, I guess I saw what was happening. You know, I grew up in a liberal household when liberalism, I guess, meant laissez-faire capitalism and look after the fellow that couldn't look after himself. And when I saw it change towards state socialism, business got tougher to do, in fact, almost impossible to do. I got angry, and rather than rant and rave to people like you, I thought, damn it, I better put some energy into changing the system. I don't want to see my country go to the dogs.
Why did you pick the Conservative Party?
I guess I am more closely aligned with those ideals, certainly economically.
You would certainly call yourself a right-winger.
Economically, I'm a right-winger.
Any follower of the theories of Ayn Rand, and creative selfishness as such, I suppose, really puts the boot so to the underprivileged, does it not?
I don't believe it does. No, I don't believe it does, because I'm very much middle of the road as far as looking after those who can't look after themselves, but I don't wish to look after those who don't want to look after themselves.
In other words, you would say if you're not prepared to work for welfare, the hell with you.
Absolutely.
Pocklington says you work for your welfare or you don't get a nickel, if you're fit to work for your welfare.
If there's a job and you're fit to work.
Okay, that's one.
I mean, even the Chinese communists don't pay their citizens not to work.
Do you think we need a form of benevolent dictatorship in this country?
Absolutely not. I believe and love democracy.
Do you love democracy?
I love democracy. It's
oh,
the
you
best
believe
system.
and love democracy.
You're absolutely right.
What about the $6 billion deficit we're going to have this year in the unemployment insurance? If you were in command of the finances, would you tolerate such a deficit?
Well, I guess we should look at what brought us there in the first place, all these 90-day fixes that have driven our country into the position it's in now. We have to look after those who are unemployed now. We must have a safety net. But I would prefer to look at a 5-year plan on changing that situation where those people wouldn't be out of work.
And what are your economic theories as such? What would you do, for instance? We now have the National Energy Policy, we've got Petrocan, we've got Dome, we've got Air Canada, and you could throw in the CBC. If Pocklington was in power or even campaigning for office, what would he recommend as the cure for Joel Bell, Lalonde and the boys, these policies? Eh?
I would kick them so far out of Ottawa that maybe they'd end up on the prairies working for a living. It bothers me to see what is happening. Here we have 600,000 civil servants doing jobs they ought not to be doing. That can best be done by free enterprise, by the fellows that are unemployed now.
Which 600,000 are you talking about? You're talking about the
the
whole federal
civil
service.
We might need 100,000 or 200,000 of them. I don't know what in blazes they do, but they're sure not doing things that are helping create a better climate in this country.
Well, how come Lougheed went along in the final analysis with the National Energy Policy?
Mainly because the federal government has an awful lot more power than Alberta. And I guess he's a pragmatic individual. Politics is the art of the possible.
So if you were in power, you would dismantle the National Energy Board altogether.
No question. We don't need an energy board in the country. We need private entrepreneurs to get involved and make the thing happen.
And you would deregulate every conceivable industry?
Not necessarily every conceivable industry. I would certainly go towards that end. In the U.S., they've deregulated the airline industry, and now fares are half price of what they used to be.
Dome.
No federal aid. If it broke up, too bad. It works best maybe broken up and let the entrepreneurs build another dream.
Let Dome go under.
If that's the way it should be, but under, I guess, my system of government, Dome wouldn't have made the mistakes that it made under this particular regime anyway.
Air Canada.
Should be privatized. The citizens of the country should own that through a board of directors and shareholders, not by the government.
Isn't that what we have now, a Crown Corporation?
Crown
we,
Corporation.
the citizens, own the Crown Corporation?
I just assumed that you had the opportunity to own a share in that Crown Corporation that you paid for.
Mm-hmm. And your income tax formula, give me that again. And where did you steal that from?
Milton Friedman, and mainly because it works.
Where does it work?
Well, unfortunately, no one's had the guts to put it into process. It does work in Hong Kong, 15% flat tax. Here in Canada, 20% flat tax would bring in the same amount of dollars that the present system is bringing in. With a $12,000 floor, the first $12,000 the family would pay no tax whatsoever.
What would that do to government revenues? Would it seriously deplete the present level of
Strangely
tax
enough,
collection?
it would bring in the same amount, with likely a third of the fellows that are doing the collecting, because people would line up to pay their 20% rather than find ways of shirking 50%.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay. If you can, please, you're a Johnny-come-lately conservative.
I'm not too sure if I'm Johnny-come-lately. I've always had those ideals that the thing that a country must strive for is freedom of the individual.
And that's your total philosophy. Absolute freedom of the individual.
As long as he's responsible to his society and his other people in that society.
And them as won't work, make them work if they're fit.
No, if they don't wish to work, fine. They can go and lie in the sun. If they don't wish to work, we all must contribute to make a country work, other than those who can't work. In other words, the people that are congenitally defective or had some hard times during life.
Mm-hmm. What would you do to our present pretty universal nationalized or socialized medical services? Are they a bad thing?
No, they're not a bad thing. I think there's a better way of working that particularly great thing. It's something that people all over the world would love to have. In fact, it has to happen, but I believe there's a better way of paying for it. We can't afford the present system. Mm-hmm. It's gone wild. We just built a $400 million hospital in Edmonton, Alberta. We can't afford that.
$400 million hospital?
Yeah, the University Hospital just cost $400 million to build and equip. It looks like a Hyatt hotel.
Well, you've got money coming out your ears.
No, we don't, but that's irresponsible.
Lougheed is irresponsible.
The particular gentleman that set in motion $400 million worth of money for that hospital is irresponsible.
Talking about money, how much have you allocated in this campaign leading up to the Winnipeg Leadership Review of your own money to pay for it?
Enough to pay for it. I think it's airfare and hotels and meals, whatever that comes to.
Airfare in your private jet and a couple of $1,000s an hour to run it.
Well, that's close.
Well, man, give me a figure. After all, I'm just an old-fashioned reporter. How much do you anticipate spending, Peter Pocklington?
Well, I haven't added it up, but I'm sure it would likely come to $70,000, $80,000.
What did Al tell you yesterday? Al Haig.
Al
Haig. Yeah, Al Haig.
Strangely enough...
Wasn't he the guy who was going to take over the White House when Reagan was shot?
No.
I'm in command now? Yeah, that's the fellow.
That's the fellow, but I don't think he really said that. He said, as long as the other fellows are out of town, I'm here until one of them gets here. He wasn't going to take anything over. The press has painted a perception of him that isn't quite correct. Yeah. And I believed the press, unfortunately, until I met the gentleman yesterday. He's a charming man. He also believes that you draw a line, and if the enemy steps over it, you knock him on the toes with a hammer. Freedom is worth protecting.
He's a hawk. You're a hawk.
I don't know whether he's a hawk or not. He's certainly a believer that freedom is worth protecting.
Can I ask you why you're meeting with him?
I had him in to speak to Canadians, to the folks in Edmonton, to state that there is hope for this future. There is hope for the coming 20 or 30 years. In fact, I think North America is in for the top 20 years of its history, coming up in 1983 on.
Do you think the economy is going to come back?
I believe in fall of '83 that economy is going to start to percolate in the U.S. Canada needs a political change first. It won't happen.
Would you like to see Trudeau get up and quit?
Wouldn't it be nice?
Do you want to see him quit?
I would love to see him quit.
Do you love an election?
I would love an election.
Will you run otherwise if you don't, if you're not acclaimed by the convention? Will you continue this fight, or is this a one-shot Pocklington effort?
I will continue the fight, but maybe in a different direction. If there is not a leadership review, I will then support Clark, find ways to help him behind the scenes that can best be done. I don't believe myself as a backbencher is going to help anyone, including me.
Where are you going to run?
Alberta.
Which riding?
I haven't picked one yet.
Have you made an arrangement with a member who's going to drop out for your benefit?
No.
I understand all of them are committed to run again.
Good. So am I.
So you won't get a seat?
No, I'm sure there's one that might appear.
You'll fight the nomination?
Absolutely. Peter
Peter Pocklington, would you want this man as Prime Minister of this great nation? After the break. Well, Peter, this is our first meeting, right?
You're right.
Might not be our last. Go ahead, please.
Good morning. I have enjoyed listening to Mr. Pocklington. My first time to really see you. I would enjoy seeing more of you, so I hope you do well in your race. I have a comment about Mr. Clark, and that is that I do not want someone leading me that looks like he's never picked up a shovel in his life. I want him behind me listening to what I'm telling him. I don't think he's really worked. His body is too frail to lead me.
Thank you, thank you. How about you? Did you ever pick up a shovel in your life?
There's no question. I worked my buns off when I was a kid.
You were a car dealer?
I was a car dealer when I was 23, but I had to get there first.
You belong in social credit. Go ahead, please.
Yes, Mr. Pocklington.
Yes, sir.
I hope that you meet with some success in your aspirations to go to Ottawa. I think that a lot of the public would like to know more about you, and one of the things that I would like to know is where you stand on the issue of accountability, and I think that that's a major problem in this country. The man in the street is sick and tired of being dictated to by people who are in a financial position such as yours. It seems to me that you're somewhat sympathetic to those of us who might be considered the general public. The accountability thing is a real issue as far as I'm concerned. It's perhaps one that I've created in my own mind.
What is it?
Well, okay. What are we going to do about such things as nuclear disarmament, for instance? If we were to do a petition across this country and get 20 million signatures, Jack, and plunk it on Trudeau's desk, he is not bound by that petition.
Okay, hold on. I can't give you all day. Where do you stand on nuclear freeze?
I believe that it's an issue that needs an awful lot of attention. We're in trouble in this world. I'm frightened myself where we're going. But I do believe that no one attacks a stronger country. Until we build up our defense, take a hard line on it, you cannot negotiate from weakness.
What he was really asking, though, I think, was, do you believe in our parliamentary democracy system whereby the House of Commons is totally in control once they get there, or do you think we should have things like the American recall system or plebiscites on national issues?
We should have plebiscites, we should have an elected Senate.
Go ahead, please.
Hello.
Yep.
Mr. Pocklington, the other people have been talking about you running for the PC leadership.
Right.
You are a Westerner, they all know that. Will you be inclined to run more in the West than the other candidates? Or will you, like what I'm trying to say is you're from Alberta. Will you be inclined to be a Westerner PC leader?
No, I'm a Canadian, first and foremost. I grew up in London, Ontario. I didn't come west basically until 1971.
Thank you. Go ahead, please.
Hello?
Yep.
Mr. Pocklington, I'm very interested in your theory of positive thinking regarding people getting back to work and all that.
Right.
What I would like to know is how you're going to get all the people who are on welfare and need to go back to work to cure the problems. How are you going to get them to share your philosophy and positive thinking first?
Well, basically, you become what you think about. And that goes for an individual or for a country. The first thing we have to do is make this country work economically by putting 80 cents of every dollar back in the hands of the fellow that earned it. What that does is create demand. When you've created demand, someone in my position or some other businessman is going to fill that, creating employment. Once we get employment going through the roof, we're going to end up in the next 10 years, if these things happen, importing people who want to work. We're not going to have enough labor. We're not going to have enough workers. But obviously that isn't going to happen until we get this economy going again.
What was that little touch of esoterica? You become what you think you are.
That's correct.
The power of positive thinking?
I don't know whether it's power of positive thinking. It's the fact that you do become what you think about all day long. If you believe that something is going to happen, you go after a goal, you're going to make it. It's that simple.
You can fail.
Can you really?
I mean, I'll tell
as
you
long
right
as you
now,
get your backside up again and keep
not all the
struggling
power of
up.
positive thinking in the world will get you the leadership of the Tory party in Winnipeg in January.
Well, you might be surprised, Jack.
Oh, you got to be joking.
I'm not joking. It's not going to happen in January, but if there's a review and the next 8 or 10 months in a leadership situation, who knows what can happen.
You're 41?
I'm 41.
Never done any backroom work for a political party ever?
I've raised some dollars. That's about it.
You've been a bag man?
I've been 22 years in business, and I believe I don't have to start linking stamps in the political system to learn the system.
Take about 5 minutes.
Right.
Go ahead, please.
Mr. Pocklington.
Yes, sir.
Yes, I'd just like to congratulate you on your success as a businessman. And I also believe the country should be run as a business. And I agree with most of your theory, and I hope give you a great success and hope you go make your leadership.
Thank you kindly.
Go ahead, please.
Mr. Pocklington, regarding capital punishment for capital crimes, should there be other crimes other than just murder, one be considered as a capital crime? For instance, sedition and or high treason, like in the case of the current Hamilton spy thriller. And will you, as Prime Minister, make public the identity of all 75 of the Ottawa-based politicians who were listed by the late Igor Gouzenko as possible compromised security risks?
Well, I certainly believe in freedom, and I believe in certainly the freedom of knowledge for all Canadians. We've got to know what goes on to counteract it.
Matter of fact, the only offence for which there is treason hanging on the books right now is treason. Go ahead, please.
Hello, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, regarding your distinguished guest there was a gentleman in Quebec. His name was Maurice Duplessis, with exact philosophy as yours. And we know eventually what lead the province to. Where the people is actually, just for example, take Chefferville and so on. I don't have to say more. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Duplessis, of course, was a noted right-wing conservative of the worst order who eventually, I suppose, ruined the province of Quebec.
Yes, I agree
I don't
with
think
that.
that's a fair comparison.
You're so right, but I guess to a fellow in that position, I can see what he's thinking.
Yeah, because most of us don't trust big, wealthy business.
You're so right, but you see,
I mean,
I'm
would you
aligned
trust
with no one.
Donald MacDonald, for instance, to run an economic royal commission?
No, I sure wouldn't. He helped us get us there in the first place.
Go ahead, please.
Hello.
Yeah.
Peter?
Yes.
I'd like to agree with your political beliefs. I'm against socialism myself. I used to make $3,000 a month selling trailers.
What do you make now?
Nothing. I'm on welfare.
Where, in Vancouver?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay, we haven't time to continue that particular conversation, but he's another supporter. I'm trying to think where I'll go tonight out of my body. Have you any suggestions?
Well, you can maybe get in touch with Peter Newman or maybe Fotheringham, the little writer you have here, and
Tiny Perfect columnist.
Absolutely.
And get them to write accurate information about you.
Absolutely.
My thanks to the incredible Peter Pocklington. Give Gretzky a pat on the back from us.
I shall. He's a tremendous young man.
And I'll be back after the break. Jacques Hebert of the Applebaum-Hebert Commission and J'accuse tomorrow morning, and the New Westminster Crime Prevention Group coming in to teach us how to fight the battle of local crime. Well, I enjoyed Peter Pocklington this morning, and I'll be back tomorrow at 9 a.m. precisely. Peter Pocklington and Webster on Check at midnight.